Well, hi there and welcome back. So how did you do with your kitchen carb clean out? Did you find a lot of poor quality foods? I just hope you didn't eat them to get rid of them. I have to admit that I'm still reeling from evaluating carb quality. It always gets my heart pumping to read labels because no matter how many labels I've read, it never ceases to amaze me what some food companies will do to convince you that they're selling a quality product. So now we're going to do it all again, but with protein. In Section A, we'll talk about protein, what it does for our bodies, and which sources are good and which sources are not. Then in Section B, we'll have another fun adventure in label reading with protein foods. So let's get started. While carbs are used by our bodies for energy, protein is used for building and repairing our biochemicals. And this means protein is used for building, repairing, and maintaining hair, skin, nails, muscles, ligaments, tendons, enzymes, hormones, neurotransmitters, and organs. Wow, that's major. So you can see that protein is kind of important. So how is protein used? You may know that proteins are made of amino acids. It's so fascinating that our bodies use 20 amino acids to create up to 50,000 protein combinations that are used by our bodies for building and repair. And each protein combination has a specific job to do. Is this not an awe-inspiring example of how intelligent and powerful our bodies are? You've probably heard of the 8 essential amino acids. These amino acids are called essential because our bodies don't make them, so we have to get them through our food. Our bodies can make the other amino acids. You may also have heard the term complete protein. A complete protein is simply a protein that has all the essential amino acids. If you vary your protein sources, you'll have all the amino acids you need. Now let's talk about high quality and low quality sources of protein. On the animal side, we want all animal products from pastured or naturally raised animals. As I mentioned in basic training, the products of animals that have been fed a diet that's natural to them are nutritionally superior to the products of feedlot animals, and they're certainly a lot cleaner. In addition, we want seafood from the EDF's list of healthy seafood choices. You'll also be delighted to know that high-quality dairy proteins include the full-fat variety. We haven't yet gotten to our discussion of healthy fats, which is coming up soon, but I'll just prime you for that discussion with this nugget, which I actually already mentioned way back in basic training. And that is, a healthy diet does not include low-fat or fat-free protein sources. Fat is our friend. It's critical to our health and it triggers our feelings of fullness when we eat. And this is a primary reason that fat-free and low-fat diets are not sustainable. Notice that I've also included whey protein concentrate on this list. Wait a minute, wasn't whey protein concentrate on the list of possible excitotoxin sources? Why, yes it was, and here it is on the high-quality protein list. So what gives? This is one protein source that may or may not be a quality product. Mostly it is not, but if the whey is from the milk of pastured cows, and if it's cold processed, it's a quality product. I know of only 2 brands that meet these criteria, and those are Terra's Whey and Mercola Miracle Whey, which you can get online. For both of these, I'm talking about the plain varieties, of course. Remember one of our rules of thumb from the last class. Buy plain and sweeten yourself. On the vegetable side, whole soy foods such as soybeans, edamame, soy milk, tofu, and tempeh are complete vegetable proteins. By the way, do you know the difference between soybeans and edamame? A lot of people think they're the same thing, but they're not. They are both soybeans, of course, but soybeans are mature beans, while edamame is harvested while the bean is still young and soft. Soybeans are higher in protein than edamame, but edamame is certainly no slouch when it comes to protein content. You saw legumes on the high-quality carbs list, but legumes are also a primary source of vegetable protein. Grains plus legumes or nuts also make a complete protein. And with that, now let's talk about poor quality proteins. On the animal side, we've got feedlot meats and dairy products, which we know are sources of many toxins, as well as reduced fat and fat-free dairy proteins. We've also got sweetened yogurt, which is loaded with sugar. Notice also the fake eggs. These are typically made of rancid polyunsaturated oils, which you'll learn about in our fats class coming right up, or egg whites. This type of product is marketed as a healthy alternative to eggs with yolks, as if egg yolks are unhealthy. Even though eggs have been eaten since antiquity, for a brief moment in time over the last 40 or 50 years, eggs were vilified as high in cholesterol and therefore unhealthy. In reality, egg yolks are one of the most nutritious foods on the planet, and there's no reason I can think of, unless you're allergic to eggs, to avoid eating the full egg. Most processed meats like salami are loaded with sugar and toxic additives such as nitrites and flavor enhancers, that is, excitotoxins. We've also got three sources of whey protein isolate, whey protein concentrate, and hydrolyzed whey protein. I've already talked about the quality standard for whey protein concentrate. Most are heat processed and made from the milk of feedlot dairy, which in my world immediately renders them poor quality. I'm going to talk about isolated and hydrolyzed proteins in a minute, so I'll hold my discussion of those until then. Finally, we've got seafood that isn't on the Environmental Defense Fund list from basic training. Habitually eating protein from these sources increases the toxic load and decreases the nutrients that you get from your food, and we want the exact opposite from our food. On the vegetable side, we've got soy protein isolate and concentrate and textured vegetable protein, which can be listed on a food label under various names, such as textured soy protein, as well as a number of hydrolyzed and autolyzed proteins. And we've got gluten. I said in the carbs class that I would talk more about gluten, and we will. So let's drill down on these. First, let's talk more about these highly refined and concentrated forms of protein. All of these protein sources are rampant in refined foods, and you've no doubt seen them on a lot of food labels. You may be most familiar with these protein sources from protein bars and shakes and fake meat products such as veggie burgers and fake lunch meats. I've also seen them in frozen dinners and even baby food and in pet food, and they're rampant in fast food. Although companies promote many of these products as health foods, they aren't food at all. I include these among the pseudo foods that I talked about in basic training. And as you're going to see, they're also frequently combined with gluten to bump up the protein content in refined foods. So what's the problem with these protein sources? The refining process degrades the nutrient and protein quality in the soy or other plant source, and artificial flavors are added to mask the strong beany taste of the soy. MSG and other excitotoxin flavor enhancers are also commonly added to fake meat products to create that meaty flavor. Let's look at the refining process for textured vegetable protein and textured soy protein to give you an example of what you're eating if you're eating any pseudo foods with these protein sources. The soy or other vegetable source is refined through an extrusion process to separate the protein from the fat. Hexane is used to extrude the protein from the fat. This part of the process is commonly referred to as the hexane bath. So what is hexane, do you know? It doesn't sound very good, does it? It's a solvent that's used in a process involving something that goes into our food. Let me read to you what the Environmental Protection Agency says about hexane. Quote, hexane is used to extract edible oils from seeds and vegetables. As a special use solvent and as a cleaning agent, acute inhalation exposure to humans of high levels of hexane causes mild central nervous system effects, including dizziness, giddiness, slight nausea, and headaches. Chronic long-term exposure to hexane is associated with polyneuropathy in humans with numbness in the extremities, muscular weakness, blurred vision, headaches, and fatigue observed. Neurotoxic effects have also been exhibited in rats. End quote. This is what happens when you breathe it. What do you think might happen when you eat it? Because, as you can see, trace amounts of hexane remain in the product after manufacturing. And what have we been talking about all along? The cumulative effect of small amounts of toxins over a long period. Moving on in the refining process, the defatted proteins are then heated to 150 to 200 degrees Celsius, which is up to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. That's molten. This heating process creates a sponge-like substance that can absorb up to 3 times its weight in liquids. So the companies that use this as a protein source in their products get a lot of bang for their buck because it swells up and goes a long way, and that makes it cheap to use. There's always a cost payoff to using these highly refined ingredients. As the molten protein exits the extruder, it expands into a puffy solid. You've probably seen some of these things on food labels. Soy nuggets or soy chunks or flakes or things like that. And to top it off, remember that the soy used is probably GMO. And just so you know, soy protein isolate is made using a similar process. So basically, you start with fresh soybeans and you end up with this. Wouldn't you just love to eat them? Now you know I'm being facetious, right? So it's kind of a magic trick how you go from fresh, green, alive soybeans to these dead, highly adulterated pseudofoods. Let's also quickly look at hydrolyzed vegetable protein, or HVP as it's commonly called. This could also be made with soy or grains like wheat or corn. What happens is the source grain or legume is boiled in hydrochloric acid. Now, hydrochloric acid is what's in your stomach that breaks down food, so it's very, very strong. It can break down bone. Then it's neutralized with sodium hydroxide. Now, what might that be? It's lye. And lye is an extremely caustic chemical used, among other things, as a drain cleaner. So if you look at a drain cleaner that contains lye, you'll see a warning that clearly states to use with caution and not bring lye into contact with your skin. So the hydrochloric acid breaks down or hydrolyzes the protein into amino acids. The resulting liquid contains high quantities of glutamic acid, codenamed glutamate, which, as you know, has excitatory effects on your brain cells when consumed in large quantities. So let me reiterate once more that our brains make glutamate in very controlled quantities, so obviously our bodies need it, but not in the quantities we're getting when we consistently eat many foods that contain glutamate in various forms. Hydrolyzed whey protein is made using a similar process. In fact, anything that's been hydrolyzed has been through something like this. Of course, other sources of glutamate that we saw on Dr. Blaylock's list include hydrolyzed yeast extract and autolyzed yeast extract. Now let's revisit excitotoxins. Here are the refined protein sources that contain or may contain excitotoxins from Dr. Blaylock's list. Well, don't these look familiar? That's because we just went over them. We've got HVP and other hydrolyzed proteins, as well as various forms of textured protein that include textured soy protein and textured vegetable protein. And then we see soy protein isolate, which is produced using a similar process to textured proteins. Just wait until we read labels in Part B. You're going to see these over and over in foods that you may be eating regularly. Now let's cross these with proteins made with GMO ingredients, which I got from Jeffrey Smith's Genetic Roulette. So HVP and protein isolates are not only loaded with excitotoxins, they're made from GMO crops. If you've been eating pseudofoods with these refined proteins, please give me an emphatic never again. Thank you. Okay, let's talk about gluten. Here's what gluten extracted from the grain looks like. Now, I'm a visual person and I don't find this appetizing. Do you? Now, a lot of people are just down on gluten. As I mentioned in the carbs class, I don't happen to think it's inherently evil, especially if you don't have a bowel disease or you're not gluten intolerant. If you want to have a sandwich with organic whole wheat bread, go ahead. Organic whole wheat is very nutritious. It's when gluten is extracted from the grain. First of all, you're getting way more than you'd be getting in a simple piece of bread. And second, because it's been extracted from its natural food source, you're not getting the synergies we've been talking about. And because gluten is used as a vegetarian protein source, people who eat vegetarian protein products, such as fake meats, are getting huge quantities of it. Dr. Mark Hyman, who's a well-known practitioner of integrative medicine, did a review of the literature in the New England Journal of Medicine and found 55 diseases associated with gluten. I'm not going to go through each of these, but if you want more details, please read Dr. Hyman's article. I think you'll find it very interesting. A number of psychiatric disorders in gluten-sensitive individuals have also been linked to gluten. In fact, in a 2012 study, researchers from the University of Maryland and Johns Hopkins reported that, quote, Gluten-sensitive patients have a host of neurologic and psychiatric complications. However, it is notable, based on the lack of gut involvement, that neurologic and psychiatric complications seen in gluten-sensitive patients may be the prime presentation in patients suffering from this disease. Therefore, gluten sensitivity may easily go unrecognized and untreated." End quote. I find this very interesting because the researchers are saying that the psychiatric condition and not gut inflammation and other gut-related symptoms are typically thought to be the primary symptoms of gluten sensitivity. This is astounding. When I was a child, I was diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and I truly wonder how much gluten, as well as other toxins in the food I was eating, contributed to that. I certainly don't have it now. While I'm not a psychiatrist and I think these conditions could stem from other sources, I really wonder how many people suffering from these illnesses could be helped just by eliminating gluten from their diets. So, to boil it down all neat and tidy, I've created a bad word shortlist for you. Hydrolyzed, autolyzed, textured, isolate, concentrate, and gluten. If you just memorize these 6 words and avoid anything that contains them, except of course for quality whey protein concentrate, you'll go a long way to minimizing your toxic load and to maximizing your nutrients because, of course, you're going to substitute any foods that contain these ingredients with delicious, nutritious whole foods, aren't you? Yes, you are. Okay, we've reached the end of Part A of protein, and you are now educated on protein quality principles. Our next stop is label reading. Yes, another fun adventure looking at food labels, this time with protein foods. Bet you can't wait. It is a bit addictive, don't you think? Reading food labels is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. In the meantime, let's look at your action item. Quite simply, start upgrading the quality of your protein foods. I'm not going to ask you to take an inventory of the protein foods in your kitchen until after our label reading adventure. But if anything screams out at you, like you have a refrigerator full of fake meat products, you can certainly do something about that now. Well, great job once again. Are you starting to feel different? Maybe a little bit empowered by all your learning? Like you're no longer a marketer's chump? You're starting to read between the lines, and before long, you'll be sending the junk food pushers packing. So I'll see you soon for our second adventure in label reading. Cheers!